it would seem that lab-grown cultured meat, fish, eggs, chicken is a dream come true. I mean, in other words, if they don't have to kill an animal and you don't have to cut down trees and you don't have to use land, why are we not jumping for joy and singing and cheering for the cultured meat industry? Even if it's not healthy and people choose to eat it and it gives them health issues, at least from these very concerning environmental issues and animal cruelty issues, how come we're not cheering like crazy for cultured meat and animal products?
Sailesh, you want to talk about the?
Let me start with one thing though. It's not humane. First of all, all of them today, Stephen, use every single one of them today. There's 70 organizations right now, 70 production facilities in the world that are producing cultured meat, and all of them use fetal bovine serum as a medium. All of them. I don't know one that doesn't. I've talked with two of the leading CEOs for the business. In fact, Josh Tetrick is involved now, just raised $1 billion for it. But they all use, that's, for those listening, it's dead calf blood, basically. And so, and secondly, it would just quickly, let's Dr. Rao take over. But secondly, it's one of their bioreactors is costing about $450 million, and it produces less than 1/50th of 1% of the meat that is consumed just in the United States per year. So, and it's expected to take another 30 years to ramp up. So no, and it's also, the end product has about 10 times the footprint, the carbon footprint that just chicken does. So let me just start Dr. Rao with that, platform, I guess.
Thank you. You pretty much covered a lot of it already. And what I also point out is that if you cannot even tell the difference between a plant-based meat and the so-called real meat, why are we bothering with other stuff, right? Just subsidize the plant-based meat and make it cheaper. So Beyond Meat is, people cannot even tell the difference between Beyond Meat and the burger that they're eating or the chicken that they're eating. So then why bother with all these other extraneous ways of creating things that are full of animal fat that is going to make you sick when people cannot tell the difference in the taste? What is it about this that they really want? Okay, so that's where I just stumble. I don't understand why you even need it, number one. And number two, as Dr. Oppenlander pointed out, the resource requirement, the fossil fuel resources requirements of that industry is huge. I mean, I have done a lot of clean room facilities, chip design, I mean, we designed the chip so that it has to be done in a clean room. But now you have to do this for your food. Chips are really, really small, right? We try to make them as small as possible. And so on a single wafer, we can have multiple chips. So you can service so many phones. Whereas that, people can eat this thing in like one sitting. So you have to create so many of these in a clean room facility. So the resource requirement is huge for creating these meats. And so to me, it is just a way to continue the old model of supremacism. See, the old model, I say that the foundation of the current system is the axiom of consumerism and the axiom of supremacism. Okay, so we are saying we don't want to give up these two axioms, but we want to see how we can make it sustainable. And I'm saying it's impossible. It's like saying, let's keep pretending that the sun goes around the earth and let's see if we can get a scientific revolution going. No, it'll never get done. You will never get there. As long as you keep taking the same foundational flaws to the next stage, you will never build that next stage correctly. So you have to abandon supremacism. You have to abandon consumerism. Both of those have to go down the tubes, because that is not, I mean, we think this consumerism is normal because we see 3,000 ads a day and we don't even blink an eye. Okay. That means that they're telling us that happiness comes from consuming more and more and more. And so they are building an infinite consumption model for every human being. So every human being is trying to become like Jeff Bezos so that we can all, each one of us, take off and go to Mars if you want to. This is not going to happen, folks. Okay, so there is a systemic problem here. The systemic problem is that the foundation of the system is incorrect. You cannot build sustainability on a false foundation. So the axiom of consumerism has to go. And that means we have to recognize that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by looking for it within ourselves. So that's the true axiom of inner peace. And instead of the axiom of supremacism, which is, I define that axiom as life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. That's the axiom that industrial civilization is built on. I happen to be born in Europe, and therefore I have the right to go and exploit people in the global south. So every year we are taking $2 to $3 trillion worth of resources from the global south and funneling it to the global north. And we think that this can continue forever. It's not. It's not going to continue forever. Okay? That kind of flow is not going to continue forever. It's only one way. And so we need to understand that the axiom of supremacism has to go. If we try to build sustainability on that foundation, we will never succeed. So the correct axiom is that what I call the axiom of unity, that all life is one family in which we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are. And we as a species better start figuring out how to give more than we take. Only then will we be welcomed back into the family of life. Otherwise, we're going to get pushed out. Okay.
Let me say that Sailesh is a deeper thinker than I am, so I'm going to give you an answer, Steve, to the question on the level of nutrition. What will lab meat be? It'll be just as unhealthy as what we now call real meat, right? Saturated fat, cholesterol. Imagine the foolishness of taking $1 billion and saying, how can I create a high-tech heart attack? It's going to be the same product we have now, maybe with less antibiotics, I guess. But other than that, the same thing. And it's not going to be healthy. So it's just the most foolish way to spend money, to try to come up with a new way to give people heart attacks.
Stephen, I think we need to make it really clear, because we want validity to what we're all saying here. And to be real clear, after speaking with a couple of CEOs of these companies, they can now, so Glenn needs to know this too, they can manipulate. So from a human health standpoint, he is right to a certain extent. They can manipulate the saturated, it's a laboratory. It's clearly a laboratory issue. Everything Dr. Rao said is spot on, and what Glenn's saying in general is spot on. But if you're going to, if somebody's going to hear us talking about it, you got to be really clear. Like, both CEOs know that they can, what they're ramping up to is that you can modify the saturated fat, you can modify the cholesterol, but the things that are factual right now, they won't have the hormones, they won't have the pesticides and herbicides. But you can't. But to Glenn's point, they will still have the arachidonic acid and the C-reactive protein increase, and they'll still have all these other issues. But you've got to be really clear about what issues they have and what they don't have. And so, for instance, they're taking a number of issues out of it that normal animal products have, but there's still quite a few in it. And I want to point out also that they're taking one cell from an animal without getting too detailed about it, but then they're using and they're proliferating it in an exponential manner in the laboratory. So there's a faulty cell line there that is unknown what that faulty cell line will do in terms of potentially, it makes sense theoretically, potentially even creating some cancerous type cells in us after we consume them. We don't know, and I'm not. No one knows right now. Even the CEOs don't know. They don't want to talk about it. But still, in theory, they're taking this one cell and expanding quickly, exponentially on it. So it's a faulty cell line essentially. So the effects to human health is unknown. But again, from an environment standpoint and from a humane standpoint, they also are not much better for very specific reasons about using fetal bovine serum, and also that they're at minimally 5 to 10 times, about 5 to 10 times the carbon footprint of just chicken right now. And one thing about Dr. Rao's point, I don't get that either. We can talk more on a personal level about this, but I don't get that either. Why people just, humans just can't, eat, wonderfully grown plant-based foods instead of going to trying to, create these high-tech things. So anyway, we can talk about more about that later, but it's very frustrating for me. But I hope that answers the question a little bit more, Stephen. But it's going to be a booming market, that and what I call better meat. I'm going to talk about both those tomorrow night in quite a bit of detail.
So if
To me,
someone,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Now, I was going to say, to me, it's a last-ditch attempt by the animal agriculture industry to cling to the old system.
Mhm.
Okay, this is their last-ditch attempt. They're saying, hey, because then they can say, here is something coming technologically, that will solve the problem for you. So don't worry about eating your meat now. Continue eating, because there's something good that's going to come down the line. And then when that comes, they're going to say, well, that is fake meat. You have to eat the real stuff. And so they can continue their system, right? It's all about continuing their system.
They have other solutions. They have Cargill is putting masks on cows
Sure.
to try to absorb the methane. They're trying
Feed
feeding
inputs. Sure.
What's that, Richard?
Yeah, feed inputs. They're changing
They're
feed inputs to
feeding
reduce methane.
seaweed to
Same
cows.
thing.
I mean, they keep, it all starts from the assumption that people must eat meat. So that they must make money selling meat. So what can they come up with next to keep this, foolishness going? But the whole thing, it's not human food to begin with.
Yeah. So from a solution standpoint, Stephen, I think what the three of us can agree on from a solution standpoint too. I mean, we can, be annoyed all we want at taste preferences, but the fact is that we need to address policymakers, because subsidies sooner or later will likely be on their table to be. They're already these cultured meat industries are already picking up quite a bit of funding right now. Bill Gates, as I mentioned earlier, has just invested quite a bit of money in the cultured meat market, but so we have to kind of twist this around so that policymakers can create incentives for just plain old organically grown plant-based agricultural systems. And that can be done. And again, I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow, but we need to, make sure we get it out of the hands of those that are subsidizing. I mean, because we'll likely find subsidizing for these cultured meat products, at some point in time too. So we've got to switch that around real quick.